If I wasn't so lucky, if I had some crazy hospital bill, there's a good chance I'd be in rehab or dead. Once drugs loses the taboo, which is going to be soon because it's getting more legal, we got to collectively change the way we scare kids into staying sober. Because all that fear mongering just makes it seem more fun. You shouldn't be afraid of drugs frying your brain. Sober isn't smarter. Sober is playing the game honestly. You should stay sober because the alternative is cheating. You're like that kid who jailbroke his iPod Touch to hack Flappy Bird. Yeah, you got the high score, but you ain't earned it. And you know it.
Definitely not a fun way to play this, but for you guys out there that want to just get a high score and then share it with your friends and just trick your friends into thinking that you're good at Flappy Bird, then you can go ahead and use this trick.
I want to warn the kids in rotation thinking about taking a puff because nobody explained this to me. The worst part about drugs are the benefits. It got nothing to do with the health defects. What makes drugs dangerous is knowing the cheat codes to the game. Doing as many drugs as I do, I probably don't recommend them. I don't recommend them to anyone. If you're sober, I don't recommend starting to do drugs because it just changes your perspective on how you approach life. But I know the cheat codes. I can't unlearn them. No amount of yoga and meditation will make you forget how fucking awesome being high is. That feeling is attainable without drugs, but it's just so much easier. The best feeling I've ever experienced in life was sex on Molly. I bet those white guys that spend months climbing Mount Everest and then make it to the top and take that pic with ice in their beard, they felt at the top of the mountain what I felt in that hotel at 3 a.m. But those white guys earned it. They prepared for weeks and suffered through freezing temperatures. I was just bored on a Thursday. Why climb an ice mountain when you could snort one? Now every day is a constant battle with my brain because I'm a dopamine fiend. Dopamine fiend is a cool way of saying idiot. I'm just inherently not like the successful people I know. The people I know on track to be multimillionaires, if they're not already, are all stone cold sober. You believe that? You think I'm exaggerating, but I'm not at all. The guys I mentioned are all early 20s and won't even sip a beer. Doing as many drugs as I do, I probably don't recommend them. I don't recommend them to anyone.
A lot of people will tell you that we live in a society that is more tolerant than ever towards drug addicts. I'm here to tell you the exact opposite. I think we live in a society that's based on a kind of apartheid. Apartheid is not tolerance. All right? When you have black people living in one part of society, white people living in another part of society, it's not that one group is tolerating the existence of the other, right? They're living separately and unequally, right? Can say that you tolerate drug addicts, meaning what? Meaning you're not actively trying to capture them, arrest them, put them in prison. Be a bit like saying, in South Africa, white people tolerated black people just because they're not trying to commit genocide against them. If you tell me you tolerate drug addicts, when you hire a babysitter, what's the first thing you need to know about that babysitter? That they're not a drug user, that they're not a drug addict. And if you hire a babysitter when they are 16 years old, which is common in our culture for whatever reason, to hire people as teenagers to be babysitters rather than in their 40s, 50s, or 60s, I think on some level they might not be a drug addict at 16, but you keep employing them for a couple of years. When they're 17 or 18, they might become a drug addict. They might become an alcoholic, and you're still watching for it. Because when you hire someone to be a babysitter, you are hiring them to sleep on your couch, to eat in your kitchen, to take care of your children. You are trusting them with all the most delicate things in your life. And the one thing above all else that makes them untrustworthy is drug addiction. Consciously or unconsciously, as we live in a society that tolerates more and more drug use and more drug addicts, I think in reality, we become a society that is more apprehensive of and more judgmental of the most subtle indications that someone is a drug user or a drug addict. Because the moment we perceive that about them, it's like their name is scratched off a list, right? They're removed from the social cast of people who can be police officers, who can be pilots, or who can even be babysitters. And they are relegated to the social cast of people who can never be trusted. Sneako is a guy who's using a lot of drugs, and in the past 5 years has used a lot of drugs. And the most pathetic thing of all is he thinks he's getting away with it. He thinks other people can't see it in him, right? But I think it's something we've all become very cynical about. It's something we've all become very well informed of. The subtle signs when you look in someone's eyes or you hear their voice that they are a drug user or that they are a drug addict. And sometimes you may be wrong. You may know someone who lost a lot of weight because they got on a vegan diet. You may know someone who lost a lot of weight because they got malaria. They got some illness that resulted in them losing weight. You may know someone who got skinny for some totally unrelated reason, right? But you may respond to those things apprehensively with the false and negative assumption that they're on drugs. Flipping it around, there's the whole question of what you're not doing with your life, what you're not cultivating, because you are on drugs, because those are the people you spend your time around. That's what you spend your time doing. Those are the excuses you carry with you and you live with, right? I had an older brother, and he talked to my dad about his struggle to be taken seriously, his struggle to be respected at the university by a professor who was basically his supervisor in getting a master's degree. So I heard about this through broken telephone. My brother complains to my dad, and then my dad tells the story to me. So, there's some level of reinvention and remixing that goes on along the way. But I said to my father, look, you're telling this story in a way that just fundamentally doesn't make any sense. Because my brother, the brother you're talking about, the minute he walks into a room, the minute he opens his mouth, the minute he starts talking, the first impression absolutely everyone has about him is that he's a burnout. The first impression he makes on everyone, his professors included, is that he is a long-term drug addict. And in this case, the first impression is dead right, because that's what he is. And he can get a master's degree, and he can get a PhD, but nobody is ever going to hire him to be their babysitter. Nobody would ever feel comfortable walking onto an airplane, talking to my brother, feeling happy and safe and secure that they're going to be a passenger with this guy flying the plane. You think, oh my God, this guy's the pilot? If this guy's the pilot, I don't want to get on this plane. If my brother somehow ended up putting on a police uniform and interrogating you, the minute you heard his voice or started interacting with him, whoa, this guy's a cop? You can tell. We talk about tolerance, but I think all of us are becoming more and more sensitive to and more judgmental about and more apprehensive of the smallest signs of lifelong drug addiction. And then there's the question of all the books you're not reading, all the stuff you're not learning, because this is what you do with your time. This is what you do with your life, right? Sneako speaks fairly eloquently about the way in which the drug high becomes the only thing he thinks is worth living for. And it's pathetic. He says, he's straining to be profound. He says that he thinks he could get the same kind of high, the same kind of ebullient joy by climbing a mountain and getting to the top of the mountain and taking a selfie with icicles in his beard. Now, he's wrong. He's never done it. He's never tried. I doubt he's ever talked to anyone who's done that kind of work. It's just wrong. But he imagines that he could get the same kind of high out of that he gets out of having sex while on mind-altering drugs. Okay? And he admits that he is motivated to, and he lives his whole life just for that kind of high. The problem he sees with drugs is that they make it too easy for him to achieve it. Right? So my brother, who went into the master's degree program and was so disrespected by his professor, what kind of person instead would walk into the room and talk to that professor and push respect and earn that professor's respect and demand that professor's respect, put that professor in a position where he can't help but respect you, right? It's not just sobriety. It's not just not being a drug addict, right? It would be the accumulation of many years of reading and research and questioning, right? That adds some kind of weight, some kind of ballast to the things you say and the questions you ask. Now, I've had the experience many times, and it often amuses me, where I walk into a room, and there's nothing extraordinary about my appearance in the particular room, and I ask a very simple question that doesn't give away really anything about my depth of knowledge, of how much research I've done. I may have done more research than the professor I'm asking the question to. But the professor, himself or herself, and everyone in the room picks up on, whoa, this guy knows what he's talking about. One of the most dramatic, I was in Thailand. This was the first time I ever met Professor Gombrich. So Gombrich is a famous and infamous figure in Buddhist studies. Very powerful academic, very famous, published books, PhD, and so on. And, a situation where it's a big crowd, and you have to walk up to the microphone and wait your turn to speak at a microphone to ask a question. And I don't know if Gombrich thinks he has a poker face or he thinks he keeps his cards close to his chest. But there had been one question after another that he was totally exasperated with, and he was openly showing that he thought these people were idiots. He's sitting like, and in one case, he actually reproached the person asking the question. He basically said he would have never gotten a question this stupid at a Muslim conference with Muslim scholars. He was only getting this question with Buddhist scholars. Interesting moment. So he's openly exasperated. Anyway, I stand up and ask a question. It's not directed at Gombrich, it's directed at someone else. And he got out of his seat. He was so excited. And he pointed at me and he asked me, who is that? Who's that guy? That guy. And he was right. And, we met after the proceedings were over. We had dinner that night, and we became friends for, 1 year, 2 years before he decided he hated me, which is in character for Gombrich. He's that kind of guy. If he ever writes his autobiography, it would be a long series of short, intense friendships followed by years of bitter hatred. I don't hate Gombrich back, but yeah. Quite a character. And I once got a story from my father, where he was giving a lecture at a university that I attended. There were 30 or 40 people in the crowd. And he said to me when it was over, he said, "You have no idea how terrifying it is to give a lecture when you are in the audience." Because he said, even if you're not saying anything, even when you're just silent, I can tell from the look in your eyes, I can tell that you're following the argument of what I'm saying, and I can tell that you're scrutinizing it, and that you know what's wrong with it. You're finding fault, even if you're silent. And he said, and the other students in the audience, with that particular lecture, this was true. He said the other students in the audience, they're sitting there like cows. The look in their eyes like cows chewing cud. I have given a few university lectures myself, so I have some experience. I have some experience with this, with the cows chewing cud inside of it. I definitely have some experience with that. And look, I want to be fair to all sides here. The drug addict thing, the background with drugs and alcohol, it's not the only reason why a professor, why a bureaucrat, why a policeman, why an authority figure will dismiss and denigrate your opinion. I have a lot of experience with good-looking women, and back when they were good-looking or cute teenagers, they got real used to just walking into a room and throwing a tantrum and complaining, making no effort at all to make their own perspective respectable or respected. They just go in and pour out their feelings and complain and kick their feet and, act like a kid. Problem is, it didn't stop when they were a kid, right? They kept doing that at 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 28, right? And nobody ever sat them down and talked to them and said, look, if you want to walk into the room and push respect, if you want to walk in the room and earn other people's respect, this is how you have to do it. This is the level of effort you have to make, right? But the thing is, for guys like Sneako, for guys like my brother, okay, even if my brother gets a master's degree, even if he gets a PhD, okay, I think they can never overcome the cognitive deficit they have brought in their lives through drug addiction. I don't think they can ever overcome it. All right. There is no way you can act. There's no mannerism you can consciously cultivate or dissimulate that will cover up the fact that you're a crackhead. Okay? Being a burnout, talking in that strange monotone, whether it is from LSD or psychiatric medicines or marijuana or MDMA or all of the above, and with most of these guys, it's a combination of all of the above. It's not something you can dissimulate your way out of. It's not something you can just make an effort to overcome. And all the years you spent partying, all the hours you spent making excuses for your drugged up friends, right? There's no way now you can turn that around and fill up that time with the kind of reading, questioning, self-cultivation, self-development that would make you the kind of person who walks into a room and earns that respect. There's no way now you can make yourself into somebody I would hire to be my babysitter. Maybe we can practice doing financial